I've come to a place where authenticity in all places in my life is so important. So I've made the decision to be more self-disclosing.
This is Therapist Clubhouse, a podcast for private practice entrepreneurs. I'm Annie Schusler. This week, I'm talking to Georgia Hill, a private practice entrepreneur in Los Angeles, California. She's an expert in sexuality and relationships and has recently relocated from San Francisco. Listen as she talks about how she's been building a practice in a new city. So hi, Georgia. Welcome to Therapist Clubhouse.
Thank you, Annie.
So I want to talk to you about your entrepreneurial journey. And full disclosure, we have worked together. And I had the honor of being Georgia's clinical supervisor in private practice in San Francisco for a few years. And so I know her pretty well. And now it's been almost a year since you moved from San Francisco to LA. And so now I get to find out what's going on with you along with listeners. So Georgia, you are a smart lady and quite a powerhouse. So I'm really curious to find out what's going on with you. So tell us about your business right now. Let's start with how long you've been in Los Angeles.
I moved to LA March 1st.
Okay.
And my initial plan was to continue in the MFT route. And I set up my first exam so I could get licensed, and I got that taken care of. And unfortunately, it was very delayed as far as when I would actually get my results.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, I started feeling a little bit of that pressure to to get my business up and running and wanting to actually be making some money.
Yeah.
So I decided to establish my LLC and establish my business as a sexuality and relationship coach. So used my expertise and my experience and all of the knowledge that I have and that I've gained over the years, as well as my education, to work with clients under the label of coaching. And it has been, and I know we talked about this a little bit over the years, that it's always been my goal to be a little bit diversified in my approach, as far as not just seeing clients in private practice, but also wanting to do things like workshops and talks and being kind of more in the public eye. So I thought this would also be a way for me to diversify a little bit. So I got all of that established, I want to say first week of June, actually. So
pretty fast. How did you start your LLC? Did you hire someone or did you do it yourself?
Well, I probably should have hired someone, but I did it myself.
Why do you say you should have? Because I want everyone to get to learn from any mistakes you think you've made.
So I thought the process of doing it would be pretty easy. Mm-hmm. You just file the paperwork and then you wait to hear back from the state. And it turns out that there's several other steps. And honestly, I can't remember at this point, but I knew I had to get the tax ID number. And so there was a couple different things that I had to do in that process that if I had just hired someone to do all of it for me, then they wouldn't have been able to tell me. So again, down the line, if I had decided to do another LLC or establish another business, I would know exactly what to do for myself. So it took longer than it should have. I actually think I started in the first week of June trying to establish all of my paperwork. And then I realized that I hadn't gotten a few things done when I went to the bank to try to open my business account. They're like, well, what about this thing? And I was like, what is that? So I do think that it would have been beneficial for me to at least just get someone to help me with that process.
Okay. And then you've got a coaching practice going, mm-hmm. and your specialty is sexuality and relationships.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I know this has been your niche for a long time. This is stuff that you are definitely an expert in. And that was a really cool thing about working with you in our center, was that you were able to bring that. But yeah, so talk about that. What is coaching in that niche?
So I've kind of honed this down a little bit, and I want to talk a little bit about the kind of clients that I work with.
Yeah.
So I've kind of figured it out that it's these two different categories. So I bill myself as sex positive and kink positive and, gender affirming, queer affirming, all of those things. So the kind of clients that I'm working with are either people that are wanting to come in, individuals or couples that are wanting to come in and they want to explore or work around some of those issues, whether it's a couple that says, hey, we want to explore non-monogamy and we don't really know where to start. Or we're wanting to, one of us or both of us is very interested in kink, but we don't know how to connect to our local community. We don't know how to get education. We don't know how to find the right resources. Or it could be an individual that's, saying, I'm feeling like my gender identity is changing, or I'm feeling unsure about my sexual orientation. And they're wanting to come and talk to someone that has expertise around those subjects. So that's kind of one segment of a client that I see. The other one is someone who, either a couple or an individual that falls under one of those categories, whether they're non-monogamous or they're kinky or they're queer or they're somewhere, in a different part of the spectrum as far as sexuality or gender identity, or they just self-identify as kind of outside of the, traditional gender roles or traditional, approach to life. So those are people coming in to talk about any number of things. It could be that they struggle with depression or anxiety, or they're in the middle of a life transition, but they want a therapist that is sex positive, that's affirming of their gender identity or their sexual choices, or just is going to understand some of the terminology. Yeah. So those are kind of the two categories. And the work that I do, it does look very similar to therapy, but the element that I feel like I'm really incorporating it. And granted, I'm figuring this out. I've only been doing it for a little bit, but I'm figuring this out. The element that I feel is really important is that I can be a bit more holistic, for lack of a better word, in providing resources and reading. And, clients will talk about, I have a client that I'm working with right now who a lot of what she's struggling with is some body image stuff and wanting to get into working out and wanting to work. So I haven't necessarily suggested a personal trainer or nutritionist or something like that, but those are things that I could provide resources in. And because even though it's outside of my scope of expertise, certainly I have some experience with it myself, but it would be something that I could provide resources to her. And I feel like that's a little bit of a different approach than probably many therapists would provide. And so the idea of coaching gives me a little more flexibility, and I feel like I can serve my clients in a different way.
I guess I want to say too, like, I see that as being such a good fit for you too, because I know that teaching and giving resources are just such a sweet spot for you. How do your clients find you?
I've been doing kind of the traditional Psychology Today listing. I have a couple other listings. I have a listing on Tristan Taramino's open list. I think I'm also in the Kink Aware Professionals list through NCSF. But I've also decided to take a little bit of a non-traditional route as far as what mental health professionals typically take. And I've been very involved in quite a few different networking opportunities here in LA. And these are multi-industry networking events. So I've been networking with people that are marketing professionals, health insurance agents, life insurance, people that are family law attorneys, all sorts of different, I've met with chiropractors, dentists. So a lot of different resources as well. So one of the biggest things that I've been doing is just networking.
Okay. And you're doing it in a way that I'm always telling people to try, and that kind of scares a lot of people. Is like, go outside your field, meet other people, and you may be the one at the top of their list, like the coach or the therapist at the top of their list, which would be really hard to do with another therapist or coach unless they happen to be like, your best friend. So, or you provide a service that they don't. Yes.
I met with someone who is a marriage and family therapist here in LA, and she primarily works with and markets herself as a teen therapist. So she only works with, adolescents and young adults. And that's not a population that I work with.
So that's such a good point. So that person, if you've got a niche like that, you actually may be within your niche, the person that a lot of people think of at the top of their list. That's a really good point. Yeah,
exactly. Another way that I've been networking is literally just looking at people on the internet and finding people that do similar or adjacent to roles that I do.
Mm-hmm.
So I've actually made friendships through this, which is another great way of finding referral sources, is having friends that are in the same field as you.
Yeah.
And whether that's through, professional organizations, or I've just looked people up and sent them an email, and whoever responds, I take them out to lunch and we have a conversation, and then we know who each other are.
Another thing I'm thinking about is in relocating, a lot of people ask about relocating in their practice. And I know before you even left San Francisco, you were starting to put out feelers, get to know people in LA. Mm-hmm. And so that seemed so wise to me at the time. How has that turned out, having started before you even showed up?
One really good thing that came out of that was there's a woman here, and I'm going to plug her practice.
Mm-hmm.
Her name is Caroline Madden, and she actually has a small press as well, and she has published a number of books, and she specializes in working with couples after infidelity. Mm-hmm. And really either rebuilding the marriage. She calls herself a pro-marriage therapist. So she's very much about rebuilding the marriage when it feels like it is worth rebuilding, but then also, helping people to recognize when it's not worth, kind of trying to recover from that. If you're dealing with someone who is a serial cheater, or someone who has, got these kind of shortcomings that will not change.
Yeah.
So I met with her, and she's someone I met actually at the conference that I spoke at through the Lesbian and Gay Psychotherapy Association last year. And she actually has a small press that she's published several books on these subjects. And she has asked me to possibly write a few books for her press. And she has also been a referral source for me. Not too many have come through, but she's not really accepting new clients right now. And so she has decided to refer clients to me as they come through. So nice. That's been a huge thing. I mean, and she's also just she's become a friend as well. We've spent some time socially together, and that's been an opportunity for me to meet more people. Because coming into a new city, I feel like the more people I know, regardless of what industry they're in, they're going to be like, oh, that one person I know. Oh, yeah, she deals with sexuality. Oh, you know what? This would be someone good to talk to. Let me ask Carolyn what her name is. Those kind of things. So I've been trying to kind of expand, again, like you said, expand beyond just my industry and be like, oh, I should just call all these therapists or these sex coaches, and then have them as my referral sources.
And you share a bit about your personal story on your website. How did you decide how much to share, how much not to share? And I'm just thinking about how your personal story kind of ties into why you do the work that you do.
It's been a process for me over the years of kind of deciding what my personal style is as far as sharing with my clients. I remember early on when I was in grad school, and, of course, I'm this baby therapist, so unsure of myself, and my professors are telling me, don't self-disclose. You don't want to, dress in a certain way that your clients are going to be distracted, and, all these very kind of rigid ideals. Mm-hmm. And so I would feel very cautious, and I would be very kind of hesitant to share much personal things with my clients. I mean, even during the time that I was seeing clients, at one point, I think I cut my hair drastically or something, or I got a new tattoo, and I would feel very hesitant to even talk about that with my clients, if they made a comment of some kind. And over the years, I've come more to a place where I think that it's really important for my clients to see me as another human, as opposed to this symbol of something. And I think that it's really important to be authentic. I'm not going to walk into a session and start telling my clients about how bad my week has been. But I think that sharing that part of myself and sharing part of my story actually lends itself to being a strength rather than a weakness or a drawback. And I have had, I think, almost every client that I've seen so far has either commented on that or said that they were drawn to me because of it. I just started working with someone remotely, actually, from New York City. And he found me on Facebook through my Facebook page, and my professional Facebook page, not my personal Facebook page.
Yeah.
And read my website, and he wants to work with me because I talked about coming from a conservative religious background, because that's where he's coming from as well. And, I don't post on my website that I specialize in working with people that come from conservative backgrounds to work with their sexuality. But I think if I hadn't shared that part of my story, that he probably wouldn't have sought me out. So not only am I going to be able to provide services to someone, and it's great, it's going to grow my business, but also that helping him find the right fit, finding someone that is going to understand some part of his experience. Granted, we had different experiences, we grew up in different places, but to understand that kind of impacts that kind of restrictive upbringing can have. So, and the long answer to your question is all of that. But I think that I've come to a place where authenticity in all places in my life is so important. So I've made the decision to be more self-disclosing in my practice with my clients.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, like, coming from just that one example, coming from a conservative background, I think that would appeal, or that does appeal, to people who have been through the same thing and maybe are feeling like, whether it's their kinks or their sexuality or their politics or whatever it is that they have felt has been like a painful transition from coming from a conservative family, let's say. So some of those folks are going to be immediately drawn to you. And then I also think having that out there, it draws other people too, who are just like, oh, I see. So Georgia went through a lot to get to where she is now. So that's a story of resilience, and it's a story of, this work she's doing is personal to her, is really something she's passionate about. Yeah, I totally appreciate what you're saying about, like, it's been a process. It's not like, as beginners, we know how much we want to share and how much we don't, but you've been working this for years, and you've come to a really grounded place around it.
Well, and in that vein, I just had an interview come out this week. I don't know if you saw on my Twitter that I had posted this interview. I was contacted by a YouTube show, essentially. It's not a TV show, it's a YouTube show, but essentially a talk show. And wanted to bring me on to interview me. And it's a conservative Christian right-wing politics kind of based show.
Oh, interesting.
And so it was.
What you going to do? Are you doing it?
Oh, no, I already did it.
You did it?
It was released this week.
Oh.
It was released 2 days ago. And it's a very personal interview about my upbringing and how I was raised and what I believe now, and then about my sexuality and the work that I do.
Wow, Georgia.
Yes. So I have it posted to my website now, so clients can access that and see that interview. And that's just another step in what I feel like is kind of part of my brand, in a sense, that authenticity and that transparency. And certainly that doesn't work for everyone. Not everyone is going to seek out a therapist or a coach or, a counselor who is that transparent. They're not going to want to know all of that. But I think there's plenty of people out there that seek something more than just, the old man on the couch facing away and you're laying down and talking, the old model.
Yeah. What was it like sitting with them?
I was a little apprehensive going into it, for sure.
Yeah.
Because I had watched some of the episodes with this particular gentleman that interviewed me, and he's a little incendiary in certain ways, and the trailer came out. They do a little teaser prior to the episodes, and the teaser that they posted on Monday essentially was trying to make me look like this sex crazed maniac.
Oh God!
Which I just thought was hilarious. I mean, personally, I watched it. I was like, well, whatever. People people believe what they want to believe, no matter how you represent it. But going into the interview, I certainly felt a little apprehensive just because I wasn't sure how much he might try to bait or, poke at me or try to kind of, inflame the conversation. But during the process, I felt like I was doing a very good job of remaining calm and being very logical and, not responding in an emotional way but being authentic and really speaking my truth. And when I went back to actually watch the episode after they released it, they did edit it a little bit, but it's not really edited that much. Honestly, at the risk of sounding arrogant, I was pretty impressed with myself.
Right on. I like that, Georgia. And you were ready. Like, that wouldn't have been something that someone should do when they're like new to this, to this new stage in their life. But like, you're so grounded in it. It's such a huge part of your story and your public story. Like, you were ready. What's the worst thing that could have happened? I'm sure you thought that through, but
yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And it also, I thought about the ramifications to my relationship to my parents and some of my family members. And I made that choice for myself. I made that choice.
Tell us about your business model. You've got some 12-week programs. Mm-hmm. What's that all about?
So I decided that for some people coming in to see me, they're coming in for a very specific reason. And that can be a little bit different than with therapy. Sometimes people just come in, they just want some support or they're having communication issues. And it can be a little more, a little more free form as far as how long they're going to be in. And those 12-week programs and the really structured programs, I designed to have more towards people that are coming in maybe with some anxiety about even the idea of having coaching, and to have that kind of that container of the time, like, we're just going to see each other for 12 sessions. It's 3 months. That feels more manageable for some people. And it also would allow for very structured instructional kind of sessions. Mm-hmm. So instead of every week just coming and being like, so how was the week? Did you have sex? Did you do this? Did you do that? Whatever, to have it really focused and say, okay, so last week we talked about this and this and this and this and this. I recommended that you have this kind of homework assignment or whatever, to keep it really focused and for people to come in and really specifically focus on the issue that they want to work on. And that was really designed because the kind of couples that I'm hoping would come in for, say, they want to explore non-monogamy, they're not coming in because they're having all sorts of communication issues and they want to explore non-monogamy. No, they're in a pretty solid place in their relationship, and now they're wanting to explore this, or they want to explore, kink or whatever alternative sexual practices you put under that umbrella. So I specifically designed those packages for people that are just seeking that one element, and kind of not only for them to stay on track, but I think also for me to stay on track, so I don't get distracted by those little other things that might come up during session.
Yeah. So they come in, and by having these programs, then you're drawing more of those people who are thinking, we want to know how to do this. And so we're going to get help from someone who really knows how to do this. We're going to open up our relationship. She's going to be able to tell us, what the pitfalls might be, what's important to put in place. Do you work with people in your office mostly or remotely? How do you mostly work with people?
Right now, I'm mostly working in my office. I sublet a really great little office in the Beverly Hills neighborhood. But
is that as fancy as it sounds?
No.
Okay.
It's not. I mean, technically where I'm at is Beverly Hills, but it's a very like office kind of area. It's adjacent to a residential area, but no, it's not. It's not that fancy.
Okay.
It's a nice little office though, and I really, really got lucky in finding someone that was subletting, and she's super accommodating and she's really sweet. It's a 2-office suite, so I use one office, she uses the other one. So I've mostly been seeing clients in my office, but I did decide to start doing Skype sessions as well. And for example, this one client I started working with who's in New York, and he travels a lot for work. And so he was like, I also didn't even want to see someone in New York because he travels so much.
And what do you charge?
I've been charging $100 a session for individuals and $120 for couples. And that's a traditional 50-minute session.
How do you feel about your fee right now?
I feel pretty good about it right now, because I kind of have been looking at other prices in the area, like the other fees, and that seems pretty on par. Actually, I mean, it's a little lower than I would probably charge if I was a licensed therapist. But at this point, I decided to start at a kind of a manageable level to try to attract clients. And then, 6 months down the road, I'm going to reassess and probably raise my fees. And my overhead's really low right now. So that was the other thing.
Okay, that's a really good point, Georgia, is that when people are thinking about money in their practices, like fee is one part of it, but then looking at how your income ends up working out for you at the end of the month with your expenses is probably the very most important thing to pay attention to.
Yeah, my overhead is really low. Like I said, I really lucked out with this sublet that she doesn't require you to sublet a whole day. You just can sublet by the hour. And so the hour price is $20 an hour. So it's very affordable. I don't actually really pay for parking there because there's a parking lot that has free parking. And then I paid up front for a year of my liability insurance, and that was very affordable as well. So I decided just to kind of start out at a place. And then if it seemed like it wasn't benefiting me and I wasn't actually making enough of a profit or my profit margin wasn't large enough, then I was going to reassess.
So if you could time travel to just before you moved to LA, what would you tell the Georgia of that time?
I think I would probably tell her to study and take her exam just to get it out of the way, because that's just, it's been hanging over me. And,
what a pain in the ass.
Yeah, it really is. And it's, I did schedule it. I have it scheduled and I've started studying, but, either that, I think there's kind of two routes that I would say. I would either say, go ahead and just get the exam out of the way, or I would say the minute you get down to LA, get someone to help you establish your LLC, get an office, and start doing your coaching work immediately. Don't even worry about getting a second job. Don't even worry about taking time off. Like, just get it going, because I think that those are kind of the two routes that I kind of wish I had taken because I took some time off when I got down here, and then I was thinking I was going to take my exam, and then that took longer than, of course, everything takes longer than you think it's going to.
Always.
Always.
Will you help me out with a listener question?
Sure.
Listener question.
This is a kind of question that I get all the time. How can I establish a private practice now that I've moved to a new city? Everyone who knows my work and could refer to me is back in my former city.
What I feel like I've done is, one, I've spent some money on marketing and advertising. I did a little bit of the Facebook advertising. I did the Google ads, just to get my name popping up when people do searches. Whether they come to me for services or not, they're going to start recognizing my name. That's one thing that I've done. Two, I've, connected with professional organizations and networking organizations and professionals here in this city to try to create those referral sources. And whether those are personal referral sources or professional referral sources, I feel like they're just as valuable. And then the other thing is whenever I see an event that could possibly be a networking event, like, for example, I went to a talk at the Pleasure Chest, which is a well-known adult shop here in LA. That was a talk with Tristan Taramino and some sex therapists. I said, I'm going to go. I wanted to see it, but I also knew that it could be a possible opportunity for me to network. And it was. I handed out at least 3 or 4 business cards when I was there. So those are the steps that I've taken. And joining, I think the other thing is, especially if you're an MFT, joining your local chapter of the professional organization, whether that's the local, CAMFT organization or like the Lesbian and Gay Psychotherapy Association here in LA, joining that organization, reaching out to your local colleges and universities that have maybe MFT programs or other professional counseling programs, see if you can come in and meet with the students, be the guest lecturer, that kind of thing. I think there's a lot of avenues that you can take just to get your name out there, and the referrals will come.
Ooh, I like that, Georgia. So like some of the things you just named, they take some confidence, right? Mm-hmm. And so I love that about you, that you always push yourself to do it now. not wait until like you've been in LA for a few years. Now you can go ahead and reach out to be a guest lecturer, but to do it right away. And that I'm sure that you're going to see the impact of that really quickly. I think the only thing I would add with this, how to establish a private practice, is other things that actually Georgia has done, like look for an opportunity to sublet in the very beginning. It's so fun to have your own office, but definitely start out with subletting, start out with a low overhead, and put all of your energy into getting your name out there and building relationships like Georgia's been doing.
Or even, I think an element that I've considered too is that, so I'm subletting and I do it and it's a great setup. But even if you can't afford to do, maybe a full day, like to do the Skype or do the phone sessions, or, to offer that as a supplement to your income. That's something that I've tried to do. And yeah, I really wanted to get my own office and have it full time just because I wanted to decorate it and everything. But there's other priorities.
Yeah, that will come. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that idea of doing online counseling, as, you could even have a day for online counseling when you're not renting an office. Yeah.
Yeah. And you could do it, you can do it from home. You just find a nice area that has some good lighting and a pretty simple background, and make sure your animals aren't going to come in and interrupt you.
Okay. So Georgia, any more tips for folks trying to build their practices?
Another way to get yourself out there is I think doing writing, and whether that's either your own personal blog or releasing, self-publishing a book or getting a book deal. There's also this really great resource called Help a Reporter Out, HARO, and you can subscribe to their inquiries that they get from reporters from all over the country, and specifically in a one category or another. So I get these daily, actually twice daily emails from them. And it can be all sorts of requests, it could be requests for experts to talk about, great dates in your area or whatever. But it's a great way to get your name out there. And I was quoted in an article a couple of weeks ago, and I try to stay on top of them every day, just send in little pieces here and there, because the more your name gets out there, the more people are going to look into who you are and maybe contact you for other articles or radio spots or whatever, but also clients.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And I'll have that in the show notes too. So Georgia, what is the very best place for therapists and coaches to find you and throw compliments at you?
Best place to find me is on my website, which is coachingwithgeorgia.com.
Good. Okay, Georgia, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Here's an idea to try.
Idea to try.
So Georgia threw out a whole bunch of great ideas, and one that is standing out to me is this. Find a networking event that isn't within your field and go to it and meet people, be friendly, be yourself, and walk out of there with at least one or two names and numbers of people who you can follow up with. For some of you, this is not going to be easy, but I can really see the value of doing this and of starting to create some relationships outside of your field. So give it a try. Thanks for listening to Therapist Clubhouse. Our listenership has been really growing, and it's thanks to you. So if you like the podcast, please tell your therapist friends about it so they can listen too. And if you really hate the podcast, then please tell your therapist enemies about it if you want. See you next week. So how do your clients find you? Actually, let me say that again so that I can not have the first part in.